there, I'm Mark from Spectrum Pulse, and today we finally have from Maruja Pain to Power. So might as well continue down this quasi-experimental rock kick for a bit to finish up this year. So let's start with the full-length debut that dropped in mid-September that got a lot of buzz and attention from what's now being called the windmill scene, due to being named after a pub in southern Britain that drew a lot of acts in this nervy, post-punk, slint-adjacent lane together. Think Black Country New Road, Black Midi, Squid, Tapir, y'all get it. And I say full-length debut because technically Maruja dropped a vault release of improvised recordings last year and a pretty long string of EPs going back to the mid-2010s, including the critically adored 2023 Knocknaria. But this album's been getting a lot of critical acclaim amidst a lot of rate your music types, thanks to not just its wild saxophone-inflected post-hardcore intensity, but also its political fervor, which could really be promising. And thus, I can't tell you how frustrating it is that I'm nowhere near as hot on this as presumably everyone else. It's not precisely bad, but man, it's got problems. For starters, let's dig into that saxophone-inflected formula, where the frenetic, arpeggiated progressions are juxtaposed with long, honking wails as the bass seethes and grinds, seeking to create this tangible menace as the riffs gradually pick up some percussive impact. But aside from the drum production sounding weirdly bricked and hemmed in, rarely ever able to maximize that explosive presence, it's hard not to notice how outside of some softer pieces, the guitars, they barely contribute to this melody at all. They're more for tremolo texture than to drive the crescendo or directly interweave with the horns. And then when you notice that the most prominent melodic dynamic is just cranking out those arpeggios, where I go back and forth whether or not the band's influence from Pharoah Sanders or Colin Stetson feels more aesthetic style that's not being paid off or just utterly missing the point, as just the cycling riffs pile up without a lead melody. Well, with little in the way of a lead riff to build contrast across songs, it becomes alarmingly difficult to tell chunks of these extended pieces apart. I've seen that some of this is all about building to the loudest possible point for transcendent power, which the truly irony-poisoned and way too online are calling crescendo slop, because I'd rather shit on Swans than actually try to understand a band like that. But I also think it's mostly because I don't think the builds are all that impressive melodically, and the grooves are really hampered by the drum mixing. And that's kind of a shame, because there are some instrumental touches that I genuinely like that you'd think across the extended runtime of a number of these songs they would develop more than just defaulting to the same formula. The gnarly bass on Bloodsport and Break the Tension, some pretty cool swirling jazz atmospherics on the penultimate instrumental Zaytoun, and then the chugging crash that builds off a more interesting sax line before the final third of Born to Die gets sucked into an overcompressed, noisy mess that is nakedly cribbing from Swans. But then we run into what might be a more distracting problem on this album. The vocals and lyrics. To be blunt, frontman Harry Wilkinson is a more expressive singer than spoken word poet or rapper. He's got a presence and range that actually feels pretty credible, but his rapping flow is painfully clunky. I really wish a lot more bands within this niche cut their teeth in actual hip-hop rather than borrow in a way that makes it really obvious any serious MC would roll their eyes, especially for a song like Trenches that needed a lot more firepower beyond the hook if it wants to be more than just Baby's first Rage Against the Machine. And look, After Law Dispute came back in earnest this year, tackling some very similar themes on No One Was Driving the Car. You can't convince me this spoken word is all that evocative or descriptive when it defaults to a lot of broad sloganeering. But surely the subject matter would make up for it, right? They've got the right politics, they're taking the right stances against late capitalism and billionaires and genocide, where many in their space wouldn't be so daring. And what to be charitable, that is somewhat true. The band trying to transmute the personal dire state of the modern world into a call for action, I get it, but this is a band that's been active for damn near a decade building up to this. It feels like they're getting a pass for getting the vibes mostly there, while the details reveal some serious missteps. Might as well go back to my 3 Ps for great political art, where I might be kind of iffy on the power. I'll give Maruja a point on populism. But the final P is precision, and it's really hard to ignore how Maruja might be able to diagnose the problem, but has little in the way of sharper acumen to address it beyond gestures at collective solidarity. Where you got a song reportedly about the genocide in Gaza on Saoirse that defaults to platitudes. It feels toothless. Godspeed You Black Emperor was more effective simply with an instrumental last year. But surely enough love will be enough to redeem everyone, because aren't we all born to die at the end anyway? And this is the way to make the most of it? I mean, it's shrugging one's way towards revolution, where there's enough of a visage of disaffection that it can be embraced, ironically or unironically, a cry of pain gone unheard that someone might as well make something from it, find more community if nothing else. But man, in 2025, I just don't think this got the teeth to really meet the moment. I've seen a lot of folks already disparaging the second half of Look Down on Us for its all masculine insecurity for not getting laid, highlighting that might be a reason why someone gets radicalized. I mean, there is a grain of truth in that, as well as the follow through that just outright leftism might not be enough. You kind of need more for men. But when you juxtapose it with the fatalism underscoring Born to Die, and the acknowledgement of the toxicity of vengeance for its own sake on Break the Tension, and this brutal struggle to break through on Trenches, it's walking this weird, blurry line between the darker sides of this nihilistic populism that can get co-opted and not having enough precision to actually cut deeper, say more. Soul Glow, this is absolutely not. So in short, man, it's frustrating because I can see a space where music like this can work, where it satiates an emotional response and yanking away despondency and a feeling of no control into, well, some kind of catharsis. I can imagine how it might be considered relatable to the target audience. But Maruja really struggles to direct any power once they have it. And that, alongside issues I already have in composition and production, no, I can't get behind this at all. I can also argue it's wildly overhyped and overrated, but the larger truth is that I just don't see it having a lot of sticking power, because for its pain into power, it's too diffuse, it's unfocused. If it got you to where you needed to go further, I guess that's worth it. But if you're already there, I can't recommend it. It's not for me at best, but quite frankly, kind of mediocre at worst. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. And look, I know this is not going to be a popular review. I've got to be fairly honest, I didn't put this off specifically to avoid the backlash because I just need to get to it in my backlog. And quite frankly, again, I've seen a lot of the acclaim, but I've also seen some pushback. A lot of the pushback I wound up agreeing with. And for those of you who are going to come here and tell me to turn my brain off, no. I want to push back strongly against anti-intellectualism in general, and when you have to meet something where it is, and I'm trying to be charitable here, there can't be as many issues in composition and production, and there is some questions that when you have the whole turn your brain off message, how it can be co-opted or appropriated, and I don't think the band would like me to turn my brain off engaging with it, so I gotta meet something where it is. Let's be real here. But hey, beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. Leave your discourse down in the comments below, or hey, if you want to get involved in supporting the channel or argue with me more directly on my Discord, or potentially get access to some year-end content early, we'll see. Link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Once again, don't feel obligated. Tough times out there, I understand, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.